I'm 74 years old, and 3 weeks ago I buried the only person who ever really knew me. His name was Martin. We were friends for 51 years. And I'm not making this video because I'm sad. Sadness would be simple. I'm making this because I did something wrong for 5 decades, and I need you to understand what it was before you do it too. Martin died on a Tuesday. He was walking to his car after a dentist appointment. Massive heart attack. They said he was gone before he hit the pavement. He was 73. We were supposed to have dinner that Friday. I'd cancelled on him 2 weeks before. Work thing. Said we'd reschedule. And then another week went by. And then he was dead. Let me tell you how we met. It was 1973. I was 23 years old, fresh out of college, working my first real job at an insurance company in Minneapolis. Martin started the same month I did. Different department, but we ate lunch at the same time. Neither of us knew anyone. For the first 2 weeks we sat at separate tables, both alone, both pretending to read newspapers while eating sandwiches. On the 3rd week he walked over and said, "This is ridiculous. We're both sitting here like idiots." That was Martin. Direct. No pretense. We started having lunch together every day. Then we started carpooling because we lived 4 blocks apart. Then our wives met and they became friends. Then our kids were born around the same time and they grew up together. That's how it happens, isn't it? You don't plan a 51-year friendship. You just show up enough times until your lives are woven together. Here's what I believed for all those years. I believed we had time. I believed that Martin would always be there. That our friendship was permanent. That I could postpone seeing him, skip a phone call, cancel a plan, and it wouldn't matter because there would always be next week, next month, next year. I treated our friendship like furniture, something solid that would stay in place no matter what I did. Something I didn't have to think about or maintain. It would just be there when I needed it. I was wrong. In 1985, I got promoted. Regional manager. More travel, more hours, more responsibility. Martin and I went from seeing each other every day to maybe once a month. I told myself it was temporary. In 1992, I moved to a bigger house on the other side of town. Only 20 minutes away, but far enough that dropping by wasn't easy anymore. We started scheduling our time together, putting it on calendars. It became an event rather than a habit. In 1998, my company transferred me to Cleveland. I was there for 4 years. During that time, I saw Martin maybe 6 times total. We talked on the phone, but less than you'd think. I was busy. He was busy. We'd catch up eventually. When I moved back in 2002, we said we'd go back to how things were. We didn't. Life had filled in the space. Other obligations, other routines, other people. In 2011, Martin had knee surgery. I visited him once in the hospital, brought flowers, stayed for 45 minutes. He'd broken his leg in 1979, and I'd spent every evening at his house for 6 weeks playing cards with him while his leg healed. But in 2011, I had a busy schedule. In 2016, my wife died. Cancer. Martin came to the funeral, sat with me for hours after everyone left, didn't say much, just sat there. That's what he did. He showed up. And I thought, we need to spend more time together. But I was grieving. I was adjusting. I'd do it later. Last October, Martin called me on a Saturday morning. This was unusual. We usually texted to make plans. He said, "I was thinking about that trip we took in 1981. Do you remember? The cabin in Wisconsin." I remembered. 4 days in a rented cabin near a lake that was too cold to swim in. We'd brought fishing gear, but neither of us knew how to fish. We spent most of the time sitting on the porch, talking about nothing, drinking cheap beer, watching the water. He said, "I was cleaning out my garage and I found the photos. You had that ridiculous moustache." I laughed. I did have a ridiculous moustache. He said, "We should do something like that again. One more trip before we get too old." I said, "Yeah, we should. Let me check my calendar and I'll call you back." I never called him back. It wasn't that I forgot. I thought about it several times. But there was always something. A doctor's appointment, a thing with my grandson, a leaky pipe I needed to deal with. I kept meaning to call. I kept telling myself I'd do it tomorrow. 5 months later, he was dead. And we never took that trip. And I never heard his voice again after that Saturday phone call. At the funeral, Martin's daughter gave me an envelope. She said, "Dad wanted you to have these." Inside were the photos from that 1981 trip. The cabin, the lake, 2 young men with their whole lives ahead of them. On the back of one, Martin had written something recently. The ink was fresh. It said, "The best days. Thanks for all of them." He'd been thinking about me, thinking about our friendship, preparing to give me something meaningful. And I'd been too busy to return his call. After the funeral, I went home and sat in my living room. I tried to calculate how many hours I'd actually spent with Martin over 51 years. In the early years, it was a lot. Daily lunches, weekend barbecues, family vacations together. But as time went on, it got less and less. The last decade, maybe 30 hours a year, maybe less. I had a 51-year friendship, but I didn't use it. I had it like I had a storage unit I never visited. I owned it, but I didn't live in it. And now I have the rest of my life to think about what I missed. I'm telling you this because I see you doing the same thing. I see you texting your old college roommate once every few months. I see you saying, "We should get together soon," to people you haven't seen in years. I see you letting friendships shrink down to birthday messages and occasional likes on social media. You're doing what I did. You're treating these relationships like they'll always be there. Like you can put them on a shelf and pick them up whenever it's convenient. But people aren't objects. Relationships aren't things you own. They're patterns of behavior. They're habits of showing up. And when you stop showing up, the relationship stops existing, even if the person is still alive. Martin was alive for 51 years after we met, but our friendship was already fading for the last 15 of them. I just didn't notice, because I assumed it was permanent. You have people in your life right now who matter to you, people who have known you for years, people who remember who you were before you became who you are now. And you're letting those connections thin out. You're letting them become background noise. You think you're busy. You think you'll make time later. You think the friendship will survive until you're ready to pay attention to it again. Maybe it will. Or maybe you'll get a phone call on a Tuesday afternoon telling you that your friend collapsed in a parking lot, and by the time help arrived, there was nothing to be done. And then you'll spend the rest of your life wishing you'd returned that last phone call. I'm not going to tell you to appreciate your friends. That's obvious and useless. Everyone knows they should appreciate their friends. Knowing doesn't change anything. I'm going to tell you to do something specific. Call someone this week. Not text. Call. Someone you haven't talked to in months. Someone you keep meaning to reach out to. Pick up the phone and have an actual conversation. If there's a trip you've been talking about taking together, book it. Not next year, this year. Put the dates on the calendar. Make the reservation. Force it to happen. If there's something you've never told them, tell them. Don't wait for the right moment. The right moment is when you're both still breathing. Stop treating friendship like something that happens to you and start treating it like something you do. Because it is something you do. It's showing up. It's making time. It's choosing, over and over, to prioritize connection over convenience. I'm 74 years old. I have maybe 10 or 15 years left, maybe less. And I've spent the last 3 weeks replaying every moment I wasted. Every time I said, "Let's do this soon," and then didn't. Every time I chose something else over seeing Martin. Every dinner I postponed. Every trip I never took. I can't get those years back. I can't take that trip to Wisconsin. I can't sit on a porch with my friend and talk about nothing. That door is closed forever. But you still have time. Your friends are still alive. Your doors are still open. Don't wait until you're standing at a funeral holding a photograph and wishing you'd made different choices. The people who know you, really know you, there aren't that many of them. And there won't be more as you get older. There will be fewer. One by one, they'll go. And you'll be left with whoever you bothered to show up for. Martin and I had 51 years, and I wasted so much of it thinking we had more. We didn't. Neither do you. If you have someone you need to call, close this video and call them. If this made you think about someone you've been putting off, share it with them. Use it as the excuse you've been looking for. And if you want to hear more from someone who learned everything too late, subscribe. Because I have other things to say while I still can. Time doesn't wait. It never has. Go call your friend.